So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Was Son of Madara and Harem. So let's start the series. For 9-year-old Ino Yamanaka, it was a dull day. Her best friend Sakura Haruna was on vacation with her parents in a well-known resort town on the northern shore of the Land of Fire. Her other pals were also unavailable. Jinjiro, her older cousin, was not interested in being harassed. He had to prepare for the academy by studying. It was so simple that Ino had no idea why. Much of what they had learned had already been taught to her by her father. She occasionally played with twin girls who lived on her street, but they were also occasionally absent. Since they were civilians, their school timetable differed from that of aspiring shinobi. She was therefore alone. She contemplated spending time with her mother in the flower business, but she chose to disregard the possibility. Despite her love for flowers, she disliked being surrounded by them all the time. Her father was still on a mission the day before, so she had to assist her mother in putting out stock. For a few days that had been her supply of flowers. She then considered trying to meet up with a Naruto buddy at the Uchiha estate. She had been thinking more and more about the boy with the raven hair for the past month or so. He was thought to be cool and attractive. She enjoyed such thoughts, though she wasn't really sure where they were coming from. The thought of that caused her cheeks to warm up a little, and she now always grinned a little when she saw him. He wasn't being very transparent in allowing her to be around him, even if she had wanted to. She became much more attracted in him as a result of his disregard for her. But she also changed her mind about that. She wasn't very interested in it just now. She said to herself, "It would be even more boring than hanging around in my room, staring at the ceiling, the things I've been doing as I've been thinking." As she kept turning down suggestions for things to do. The ceiling. Ino's gaze widened. The loft. Of course. There, she could view photos of herself as a newborn, her parents as children, and even her parents at the academy. She could look through some of her mother's old clothing to see if any of it was purple and orange. Even while some others found orange to be bright and annoying, she adored both colors. It was strange since it went against her love of fashionable, avant-garde apparel. Perhaps even locate some of the spirit art scrolls from her lineage. She wanted to learn them and believed she was prepared, but her father wanted to keep her from doing so. Confident of her intentions, she rose from her room's floor and proceeded to the attic. She noticed how dusty it was when she reached the top. For the most part, she disregarded it and went to the boxes where she knew her baby belongings were. That was the first thing she did. She retrieved the box from beneath a stack of her old clothes, opened it, and started looking through her infant years photo album. As always, she was adorable, but she had a realization. She noticed that there were no photos from when she was still in the hospital after giving birth. Ino frowned at the idea and was certain that those pictures were there because she knew her mother loved to take and have pictures shot. She started looking through the other 2 books in the box, but those photos didn't show her as a baby. Rather, they showed her growing older. This development annoyed her, so she replaced the albums and turned to face the less used area behind the stairway in the back half of the attic. It was dusty and all that, but it wasn't packed with stuff. Ino shrugged as she glanced down at her attire. She was only wearing athletic shorts, and the top was a little dated and orange. She believed it was acceptable to get down and dirty in order to locate her newborn photos because a little dust never harmed anyone. After 40 minutes of exertion, she discovered that it was far more work than she had anticipated and that she was getting very muddy. It was laborious work since she had to lift everything off of objects to examine them, and then put everything back so she could go on to the next item. She was looking through a box of ancient scrolls that she had just lifted off of a larger box, and it appeared to be promising. It appeared to be the package she was looking for because it was full with baby items, girl baby clothes. She smiled after navigating to the bottom of it. There was a red photo album book at the bottom. Though she was more concerned with confirming that this was the book she was looking for, she did notice some papers in the back. When it was, she grinned. She was in her mother's arms, wrapped in a pink blanket. In the arms of her father. In the arms of the fourth headmaster. Hold on, what? Looking at the picture she had passed, she saw that it was, indeed, the fourth headmaster, holding her as a newborn with a proud smile. This took Ino by surprise. Were he and her father friends? Or him and her mother? She didn't know. It felt strange to watch him embrace her. She started to listen to the CD in its entirety, and discovered that it wasn't the only time he appeared. Her infant photos frequently featured the renowned headmaster, either in the front or in the backdrop. A very pregnant redhead who appeared to be equally thrilled and unhappy was also in the background, next to her dad's friends Chuza and Shikaku. She didn't know how to react to that. As she finished reading the book, she came across the documents she had already highlighted. As it turned out, it was a sealed letter. The words for Ino were written in large letters on the front, and she was so taken aback that she considered how to carefully open a seal. At first, she attempted to just remove it, but that caused a painful small shock. After that, she attempted to give it tiny bursts of core energy, but it didn't really help. Until she recalled a seal her father had once broken with his blood, she had no idea what else to do. Considering it her best lead, she bit her thumb until it bled, just like her father had done, and then placed it on the seal. It worked, much to her amazement. The letter could now be read. She quickly unfurled the paper to do so, and as she did so, a picture dropped out. She reached down to pick it up when it fell to the ground. She was perplexed by the image. Although it appeared to be a joyful family photo, it was illogical. Her mother was in the hospital bed, she was in the pink blanket, staring at the camera, and the fourth headmaster was grinning kindly down at her. She started reading, hoping the letter might clarify. Ino was in tears. Weeping. Not because she detested her true father, her mother, or the man she referred to as her father. She was crying because she would never get the opportunity to meet her real father, a legend and village hero who was also a flawed man. She sobbed as well because she had no idea that Naruto might have been her brother. With the possible exception of being noisy, they were very different, yet they were still brothers and sisters. Additionally, she had spent the majority of her life ignoring him and paying attention to the negative tales that were spread about him. What would those gossips think now, though, that he was the son of the town hero? She heard her mother's voice and footsteps. She must have heard the sobbing. Her face froze in terror as her mother bounded up the stairs and searched around to see where her daughter was injured. Tears were wiped away by Ino. "I know, Mom. I know." As a lady, Nikko Tozu Yamanaka had few regrets. But she was obsessed by those regrets, which were significant. She had been attempting to suppress one of those regrets for more than a decade, but it had recently surfaced once more. She needed whiskey to soothe her anxiety, but it was a little early for her favorite beverage. Having been filthy from her excavation in the attic, she had sent her daughter off to shower and promised to speak with her later. She knew it was time to explain since the water had stopped running. Reading the note Minato left her over and over again had kept her occupied. She had always wondered what it said, and now she understood. She knew all the facts beforehand, so she wasn't startled by anything. Even the familial ties between her daughter and the local outcast. Because of this, she had never treated him badly and had always spoken well of him to others who were spreading unfavorable rumors about him. She heard footsteps on the stairs and took a sip of her whiskey. She braced herself when she saw her daughter appear and sit across from her mother. Upon examining the bottle on the table, Ino recognized it as a whiskey bottle. She knew her mother enjoyed the drink because she had witnessed her parents host a few get-togethers with friends. It calmed and made things less stressful, she loved to say. She stared up at her mother, ignoring the bottle. With the exception of the eyes, she resembled her practically identically. She had presumed that her father had given her blue eyes, while her mother's eyes were greenish-gray. That must still be true, she guessed. Despite her strained appearance, Ino remained silent. In the shower, she had made the decision to let her mother explain everything and help her come to terms with this discovery. Ino-chan, I know that you are very confused. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you had to find out this way about this, her mom said to her. Ino did nothing but sit and listen. Her mom went on. She fell asleep, clearly thinking to herself. You are probably wondering, what made me do what I did? I wish that I could say it was for a good reason. That my actions were just. But that is a lie. My reasons were petty. So petty. Ino was quite interested, but she kept it to herself. Nico smiled at her daughter as she turned back to face her. You know that I went to the academy when I was young. My parents were so proud that their daughter would be a ninja. The first ninja in the history of the Tozu family. But things didn't work out so well. I failed the genin exam twice, unable to perform the spirit arts well enough to pass. I quit, ashamed of my failure. But there was one good thing that came from the academy. I met your father and his two close friends Shikaku Nara and Shiza Kimichi. Eventually we fell in love, but there was a problem. Something I didn't tell your father. About how I felt so inferior to him. That I was a failure in my life. That I had to work as a gardener, a common civilian job, when he was this great ninja that was respected by everyone. I always feared the day he would realize he could do better and leave me. And when he began to stay out more with Shikaku and Shiza after the war ended, I didn't believe it. I thought he was seeing someone else. I didn't understand why they hung out together and drank so much to bury the memories of war. So I thought it was something else. With a sigh, her mother gazed at her daughter with guilt. Eventually, I confronted him on the issue. He told me nothing was further from the truth, but I didn't believe him. I was so mad when he told me that, because I was so sure that he was cheating. So, it came to me. That horrible, anger-induced idea of revenge I got. If he could have an affair, why couldn't I? So I went to a bar, fully expecting to pick up a stranger. But everyone knew who I was, Inoichi's wife, and completely off-limits. No one tried anything. I was mad, and decided to grab the attention of someone in a booth. I really wasn't expecting to see it was Minato, the headmaster. We ended up talking for hours, complaining to one another about our problems and fears. Eventually, the bar closed and the bartender made us leave. Thank God he didn't realize who it was. The hood he wore hid his face. We ended up stumbling to his home. Kushina was out for the day on a mission. I expected to have to stumble my way home, but when I went to say goodnight to him, I was greeted with a kiss. It was what I wanted, so I went with it. And my goal of the night was completed. The next morning, I immediately regretted everything we both did. A few days later, I confessed to Inoichi what I did, about how I got even with him. He explained that he would forgive me, but I was wrong. He would never cheat on me, and in fact he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. Even after what I did, he proposed to me. That was when I knew your father loved me completely, and that I would love him completely too, since he could accept. We ended up having a short engagement. We were married a week later. Her mother let out a sigh, one that said how she was relieved to tell her daughter everything. Then I found out I was pregnant, and I was so happy. Then I remembered Minato and what we had done, and I was so scared. By this time, everyone knew his wife was pregnant. She had been since before the night, so I knew that it would ruin everything for him if people found out. So I got a test done, under the guise of checking for any birth defects, but to actually privately check paternity. I got the records of both Minato and Inoichi, with Minato's permission, and checked. Their DNA was quite different, so it was quickly obvious that you were Minato's child. But it didn't matter to Inoichi, since he immediately agreed to act as your father. He knew he could ruin the headmaster, the man who slept with his at the time girlfriend and now wife, but he never thought of it for a moment. So, after agreeing that we would reveal the truth of your parentage at a later date, Inoichi became your father by all legal records. Her mother finished her story, taking another sip from her cup of whiskey. As soon as her mother was done, Ino remained silent. Everything had to be processed by the 9-year-old. She wanted to state that she was astonished by her mother's actions, but she was jaded of that feeling after learning that a headmaster could do the same thing. She didn't really want to think about it, but she figured it might make sense. In all honesty, Ino wished to forget the fact that her mother had cheated on her father. Ino tried her best to explain it, but she wasn't particularly interested in that just now. She was thinking about something else, something far more significant. Ino questioned her mother. How come you didn't adopt Naruto? After glancing at her, her mother turned her head away. I couldn't do that to Inoichi. Ino was perplexed. What do you mean? She glanced up at Ino after glancing down at the table. I don't think you understand how hard it was for him. He loves you like you were his real daughter, and considers you his real daughter, but knows he is not your real father. He accepted me, after what I did to him. I wasn't going to hurt him again. Imagine, not only having to raise a daughter that you have to pretend is yours, but a son from the same man who is your daughter's real father. Well, you can't imagine it yet, but what I mean is that it would hurt him and not be right to him. Ino paid attention to her mother's words. Her mother said nothing. But he's my brother. Shouldn't I have my brother in my life? When were you going to tell me? When were you two going to tell me about my real father, about Naruto? As Ino waited nervously, she heard her mother murmuring something she couldn't make out. Ino said, Mom, what did you say? Never. The admission left Ino speechless. You weren't going to tell me? About my real father? About me having a brother? Ino replied with reproach. Her mother was unable to meet her gaze. We thought it would be better that way. Ino was furious now. Better? How could lying to me be better? She exclaimed. She was offended that her parents had not told her about her brother and father. We just thought it was better if you didn't know. That you wouldn't hate us from keeping it from you. That you would be happier this way. With a lie? This was the last time her mother gave her a look. She had humiliated her into keeping quiet. She snatched up the letter and raced out of the kitchen, furious at her mother. After putting on her sandals and putting the note in her pocket, Ino slammed the door behind her and strode out of her home. When she heard her mother trying to follow her and shouting for her to return, she started to march in an aimless manner. Then she started running, trying to make sure she lost her mother by going around as many corners as she could. She eventually ran across them as she was making her way to the woodland. With her hand on the letter in her shorts pocket, she slowed down and started to stroll aimlessly into the woods. After a while, she heard some boys running in her direction. As they ran past, she moved to the side of the road. She understood instinctively that they were referring to Naruto when she heard them chuckle about how they had beaten up the loser brat. She eventually reached a little clearing, continuing in the same direction as they had come. An older man was dragging a girl away in the distance, and it was clear that the girl wanted to return. But Ino wasn't paying any attention to them. Already, she was over a battered and unconscious Naruto. She felt his pulse and verified that he was still alive, recalling some of the techniques she had learned in class. After that, she noticed that his chest was rising and falling, which told her that he was still breathing. She started carrying Naruto fireman style out of the woods and to a medical facility, using her impressive strength for a 9-year-old kunoichi in training. Her intention was to check on her ototo. As she took her brother to the hospital, Ino was troubled by the stares she received. She had never idea that someone could stare at a child with such anger. Why would you help that? They appeared to ask, which genuinely perplexed her. Everyone was aware, or had heard, that Naruto was strange, but that didn't stop him from being despised. Ino was quite curious about what people could believe her brother had done. He was definitely a prankster, but yet. As she marched to the hospital, she concentrated on ignoring the glares. She suspected it wasn't out of compassion that she was given a wide lane to travel in. But she would accept it, and she arrived at the hospital with Naruto on her shoulders. Even the nurses, who were the highest professionals, were upset, and Naruto was swiftly given a gurney. When one of the nurses pushed her, Ino followed them as they led him to a room. So, what happened this time? Withdrawing her gaze from him, Ino turned to face the nurse. The nurse nodded at her account and turned to face one of the nurses caring for Naruto. I was in the forest when I saw a few boys running out who were talking about how they beat up somebody. I went to look for who it was, and I found Naruto. He was like this, but I checked to see if he was breathing and stuff, and he was, but I thought I still needed to take him here. She turned and walked away, leaving an incoherent Ino behind. I'm going to go and inform the headmaster of this. With genuine concern, she questioned. What does she mean? Why does she have to get the headmaster? After a brief delay, the nurse turned to face Ino. It is the headmaster's orders that any time he is brought in, we contact him. Also, you have to stay here until then. He will no doubt want to talk with you. You did bring him in. Ino accepted the nurse's words with a nod. Is Naruto going to be all right? As she worked, the nurse nodded. Nothing appears wrong, they just beat him pretty good. Knowing him, he probably didn't even need to come. Ino objected. But he was unconscious. He had a bunch of cuts and bruises. But the nurse ignored him and kept caring for him. As they led him to a room, Ino observed and followed him inside. After cleaning every cut, they conducted their tests. At last, they looked at Ino. He should be just fine. He should be waking up soon, and he will be all right. Ino grinned a little. She said to the nurse, Thank you. At the door, the nurse glanced over Ino. She gestured to the door behind her and said, And I think someone is here to talk to you. When Ino turned around, the headmaster was there. She bowed slightly and offered him a phony grin. Hello, Headmaster-sama. When the headmaster realized how phony her behavior was, he merely smiled at her. He turned to face the nurse and said, Hello, Ino-san. The nurse nodded and said, If you could please give us a moment. She closed the door behind her and walked out of the room, saying, Of course, Headmaster-sama. Ino looked away from the headmaster icily, her smile gone. In order to keep an eye on Naruto, she approached the side of his bed. The headmaster was astonished by her icy tone when she said, What do you want? The headmaster approached the other side of the bed as Ino did and said, I came here to check on Naruto. Could you tell me what exactly happened? I was in the forest when a few boys talked about beating up a loser brat, and I knew they were talking about Naruto. I then followed the way they ran from and found him on the floor unconscious. I saw a man pulling a girl away, who looked like she wanted to help. I made sure he was okay enough to move, then I carried him to the hospital. Her account was short and bitter. This attitude perplexed the headmaster, who made the decision to find out why. He let her tell him. You sound like you aren't saying anything, Ino-san. She remained silent for a bit, not even glancing at Naruto or him. Even though her face was veiled, the headmaster took a step back in astonishment when she lifted it. There was pure hatred on her face, and it was only for him. The headmaster moved in a manner he hadn't seen in decades as a result of his amazement at seeing such a gaze from such a little lady. You knew. After he had recovered, the headmaster arched an eyebrow. Knew what? This infuriated Ino, who started to yell. She started to march around the bed, stomping with every step, saying, You know exactly what? You were gonna hide it from me, just like my mother and so-called father. Although the headmaster didn't worry for his life, he might have if she had been a little older. In search of clarification, the headmaster questioned, What, do tell, was I going to keep from you? I don't know, About my father really being the fourth headmaster and Naruto is actually my half-brother. It made the headmaster halt. That was never even on his list of things he expected her to say. She claimed to be the daughter of the Konoha's hero, but she somehow knew Naruto's parentage. She only needed to be aware of Naruto's ancestry to start weaving the signs of a high-level spirit art of seclusion. As the headmaster started navigating by hand signals, Ino watched in immediate terror. She genuinely feared for her life because she thought the headmaster would kill her for knowing. Then she heard him exclaim, "Hidden Bubble Spirit Art!" A quick sheen enveloped the three of them, a core energy created bubble designed to prevent the entry of sight, sound, and smell. "What did you just do?" Ino questioned, shakily. The headmaster gave Ino a downward glance. "I cast a spirit art so we may speak in private. Firstly, how did you discover about Naruto's lineage, and secondly, what do you mean your father is the fourth headmaster?" Ino was surprised. Was he unaware? The headmaster should have known everything, right? She took it out of her pocket and held it in her palm, remembering the letter she had snatched. "They didn't tell you?" The headmaster was not happy about being kept in the dark about this. "Ino-san, what are you talking about?" Ino swallowed. "My mother cheated on my father because she thought he was cheating. And my real father, the fourth headmaster, cheated cause he thought his wife was going to leave him to find the rest of her clan." She gave him the letter. "I heard the part about my mother from her." The headmaster took the letter, read the contents, and looked at the seal to make sure it was Minato's style, which it was. To be honest, he was completely taken aback. He quickly filled the seat that was inside the bubble's protection. "Minato, why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I was in my attic, looking for baby pictures of me in the hospital when I found it," Ino said, unable to think of anything else to say. "My mother confirmed it to me when I spoke with her. She went on to say that they would never be honest with me. That they intended to deceive me by not identifying my biological father or claiming that Naruto is my brother." "What do you say? What do you mean? Naruto is my brother?" both of them asked, turning to face the now awake Naruto. He had only woken up to the final statement, and was unaware of the rest of the tale. The headmaster sighed as he glanced at Ino and then back at Naruto. He truly didn't want to inform Naruto about his history until he was a special jounin or jounin rank, powerful enough to protect himself, but he couldn't hide this from him because he had a sister who could only be explained if he knew, and he failed to provide Naruto with a happy, healthy childhood. "I am as shocked as you are, Naruto-kun, but evidence shows that she is in fact your half-sister." Naruto's mouth fell open. But I'm an orphan. And Ino had both her parents. How would that work?" The headmaster rose from his chair and walked to Naruto's bedside, sitting up straight. "We will need someone else here before all is explained. I need to hear from your mother, Ino-san, to have all of this sorted out." With a groan, Ino nodded. After leaving the bubble, which was still intact, the headmaster sent one of his ANBU to go get Ino's mother. Naruto stared at Ino inside the bubble. When Ino noticed, he turned to look around. She asked, genuinely perplexed, "Why are you staring?" Naruto looked wide-eyed. "You're my sister?" Ino gave a nod. "Tough to believe, right? But nope, I'm your big sister." Naruto's eyes were becoming glassy as he attempted to close them. "You're my sister." He said it again, attempting to ingrain the crazy idea that he wasn't alone onto his own mind. All Ino could do was nod. "Yeah, I am." Suddenly, Naruto caught her by the waist, and Ino could feel the moisture seeping through her clothes. She heard him say it out loud, his voice muffled. "I have a sister!" She could tell it was a cheer, despite the muffled voice. At that moment, the idea of having a brother truly hit Ino, causing her eyes to go watery as well. As the truth hit her full force, she whispered, scarcely raising her voice. I have a brother. After taking off her shirt, he properly hugged her. Nei-chan. When Ino heard those words, she started crying and threw her arms around him, giving him a huge hug. Naruto. The headmaster was moved as he watched. Naruto had something he had been forced to live without, and it was unexpected. Family. Inoichi grinned as he and his Chunin comrade went into the headmaster's office to discuss their recent B-rank mission. The headmaster wanted the Chunin to gain experience in infiltration, even though normally they would only send one jonin for such a mission. The money had been taken from one of Konoha's main business partners, and the fake scroll had undoubtedly given the thieves a nasty surprise. The mission had gone off without a hitch. His Chunin companion's head was high, proud of his accomplishment, and the headmaster just knocked to let him in. They provided their thoughts on the task and handed over the scroll containing the money, which came to more than 8 million real, about $1 million. The headmaster sent the Chunin go after being pleasantly pleased with the outcome. Are you sending me on another mission already, Headmaster Sama? I haven't even seen Nico-chan and Ino-chan yet. The headmaster sighed and placed his hand on the side of his desk, activating all the privacy seals he required for high-security scenarios by pouring a small amount of core energy into a seal. Inoichi tensed when he noticed the seal's slight brightening. This was bad, whatever it was. I'm quite disappointed in you, Inoichi. What are you talking about, Headmaster Sama? I thought this mission went to your satisfaction. He responded courteously, being careful not to say anything that would implicate him in any criminal charges. Slowly, the headmaster nodded. It was, but I was speaking about the fact you have been keeping secrets. Inoichi's eyebrows went up. He couldn't think of anything he had kept from the headmaster, so he asked, What do you mean? Well, the fact that you hid your daughter's true parentage from me is quite concerning, especially when this involves something as sensitive as the yondaime. Inoichi went cold. Honestly, he had completely forgotten about it. Telling a falsehood to everyone you know for more than 9 years tends to make you believe it yourself. As those suppressed facts became apparent, he swallowed. How did you come to know this, Headmaster Sama? The headmaster would never make such an accusation without concrete evidence, therefore it was pointless to argue. You should know of all people to dispose all evidence in order to keep a secret. 4 days ago, Ino discovered the letter Minato wrote to her in case he was not alive when the truth was revealed to her. It also disclosed the fact she was the half-sister of Naruto, another fact I did not know you had knowledge of. Inoichi cast a shamed glance down. There was no denying that he was in serious trouble. I apologize, during the pregnancy Minato kept in touch and told us many things, including about Kushina-san's status as Jinchuriki and how we're ideal to hold the tailed beasts. Despite your announcement that the child had died because of the QB, it was obvious to both of us the truth. There was a sigh from the headmaster. I am quite mad at you for keeping such facts at you. If I were another man, I would bring up charges of treason and have you executed. However, losing a shinobi such as yourself would do only harm to Konoha overall, and hurt your family. Instead, you will be docked 30% of your pay for 3 years, and will be forced to resign from your seat on the Jonin Council. The reason you give can be your own. Inoichi would have sighed in relief if it had been any less strained. Rather, he merely nodded sharply. I understand, Headmaster Sama. I will also warn you, the headmaster continued, that Naruto has moved into your house with you. It was actually on Ino's demand. She said she would live with her brother. Inoichi swallowed. Headmaster Sama, how I will explain this? Our family randomly adopting him will bring up many questions I do not know how to answer. The headmaster contemplated whether or not to advise him, but he soon saw how correct Inoichi was. What was the rationale behind his adoption of Naruto? Although no one had yet to comment, it would undoubtedly spread and cause problems. The events of the last few days reminded him of a suitable reason. It was seen by many that Ino carried Naruto into the hospital after he was beaten up by a few unknown bullies. We can say that Naruto was in fact defending Ino. From there, we will say Ino got to know Naruto better because of it, and came to think of him as a brother in that short time, with Naruto feeling that Ino was like a sister. Deciding her new self-proclaimed brother should have a family, they convinced you and Nico-san to adopt Naruto. Do you agree with this arrangement? Realizing it was better than anything he could imagine, Inoichi nodded. He could have always let Shikaka come up with anything, but if he didn't already know the truth, it would mean telling him. It was also likely that Shikaka had used his intelligence to discover the truth and kept quiet about it. Unruly Nara. The headmaster calmed down. Inoichi, while I am mad, I am not without compassion. You are no doubt a better man than I, accepting Nico-san back afterwards. I must admit I don't think I would have had the courage to do so if Biwako-chan had done the same. Inoichi stated without doubt. I would always accept her back. I love Nico-chan, and want to spend the rest of my life with her, mistakes and all. The headmaster grinned briefly before his expression calmed down. I trust you to protect Naruto as if he was your own son. Inoichi answered coolly. You needn't worry about that, Headmaster Sama. I can do that. The seals were then released by the headmaster. I'm glad to hear that, Inoichi. You are dismissed. Inoichi made a deep bow. He hurriedly left the workplace and made the anxious journey home, saying, Good day, Headmaster Sama. Not because he was afraid of Naruto, Nico, or anything else, rather, he was afraid of how his beloved Ino would react to him. He was worried that she would chastise him, perhaps even despise him, because he had been brought up to think of himself as her biological father. However, he was even more frightened if she just called him Inoichi. His nightmares were inspired by that thinking. After landing in his doorway from his rooftop jump, he swallowed in terror. Then he walked into his house without a second's hesitation. He was kissed as soon as he entered the living room. He grinned and gave the lady he loved a kiss in return, allowing himself to bask in this fleeting happiness. He whispered against her lips, Nico-chan. Before she parted from him, she kissed him once more. He noticed that beneath her grin was a ball of stress that he knew was the source of her words. I'm glad you're home, Inoichi-kun. Headmaster Sama told me everything. Where are they now? Inoichi inquired. Nico exhaled deeply. Inoichi nodded, but her attempts to lighten the mood were unsuccessful. In his room, the former guest room. She is helping him settle in. It looks like Shikaku and Shadow Ninja will have to find a different place to hide and sleep when they come over, huh? She said. How are they taking the news? Nico glanced up at the room they were in and smiled slightly. Better than expected. Ino is mad at us for planning on leaving her in the dark, but she has been lessening her glares at me. Naruto, I was surprised that he forgave me so quick. He is more happy that he has a sister than mad that we weren't planning on telling him. When he found out about his heritage, though, he nearly had a heart attack. I can't blame the boy, finding out that he's your father. She highlighted the word. He, referring to Minato. Inoichi nodded, understanding her meaning. The boy is so happy right now. I'm a little worried about how he'll take the news about it, though. This understanding would further exacerbate his long-standing apprehension about the psychological impact it would have on the youngster. His tactful questioning of the matter went on. So, are they acting like brother and sister already? Nico was able to laugh. Quite. It's a little funny, seeing them go from clingy to arguing and back to clingy. We went shopping the other day, and Ino tried to find other colors for him besides orange, but it was a challenge between the two. She had him in a headlock and dragged him into the changing room at one point. I could hardly stop my laughing. Inoichi was concerned about the news's potential dissemination and asked, What did other people think? We went to the small store your cousin runs, Miko's. There weren't really many customers, and nobody said anything anyway. Enoichi gave her a nod and immediately explained the justification they had decided to employ for the last-minute adoption. Nico gave it a nod of approval. She glanced back at the area where the children would be on the second floor before turning back to Enoichi and said, "That sounds like a good excuse. Are you going to talk to them now or later?" Before he could finish, his wife placed a consoling hand on his shoulder. "I think it would be best to talk to them now. I just hope Ino-chan." As she mentioned her transgression, Nico flinched and said, "Don't worry. She will always be Daddy's little girl, even though you aren't her father." Enoichi just gave her a nod. He kissed Nico's cheek and went up the stairs to Nuda's room doorway, saying, "I hope so." The two were squabbling at the time, so no one spotted him. Nuda countered, "But I don't like to read." Because of his new attire, Enoichi nearly didn't recognize the boy. Black cargo pants and a green jacket with a swirl on the back that matched the color of a Chunin vest. But he knew it wasn't without his favorite hue, because he seemed to have an orange shirt on underneath his jacket. Wearing a black skirt that fell just above her knee and a purple top with a white collar, Ino stood with her hands on her hips. "I don't care, you aren't filling the bookcase with cup ramen." Nuda gripped several cups to his chest and protested. "BB, but your mom won't make ramen that often, so I need to have some on hand." Ino rolled her eyes at this, and Enoichi could tell. "But in your room?" Nuda charged. "So you won't eat any?" Ino asked her younger brother. "Why would I eat some of your ramen?" Nuda put on a contemplative expression while he considered it, but he shrugged after remaining that way for a short while. He accused her by pointing to her. "I dunno, but you would," he said. Ino simply gave a headshake. "Baka brother." Nuda merely sulked. "Evil sister." They both remained silent until they turned away from one another and gazed at one another at the same time, huffing once more. Ino started to eep as she finally caught sight of her father. Nuda observed the man standing there when he turned back to see what had happened. Enoichi chose to talk to Nuda first since he could see how uneasy he was right now. "How are you liking our room, Nuda?" The question caused Nuda's eyes to widen, but he calmed down. Really good, Yamanaka-san. Except that Ino-ne thinks I shouldn't have my cup ramen in my room." Enoichi allowed himself to smile in understanding. Enoichi considered the right term and said, "You don't have to call me that. Call me Ajizan, alright?" was the one that finally became clear to him. Nuda massaged the back of his head and nodded uneasily. "I guess." He was clearly at a loss for words. "Say, Nuda, could you go ask Nico-chan what she is making for dinner tonight?" Before turning to face Ino, Nuda arched an eyebrow in response to the query. He nodded back to Enoichi after Ino nodded to him. He then walked out of the room, leaving the two of them alone. Sure thing. Be right back." Enoichi started talking right away. He looked at his daughter, who was keeping her head down, but he could see the few tears start to fall. "Your mother told me how mad you are at us. I can't blame you. We shouldn't have planned to keep it a secret from you forever, even though we told your father we would tell you at 12. It was selfish of us to try and cover up the past, since it only hurt everyone." In a consoling gesture, he took her by the shoulder and said, "I hope you forgive me, too. I know that I'm not your real father, but it doesn't matter to me. You will always be my little girl, blood or not. I just hope you can forgive me for lying to you about that." Tuesdays were dreaded by Nuda. To begin with, it was the worst day of the week, even worse than Monday. At least you had the day prior free on Mondays. There was no such thing on Tuesday, and the week was still quite lengthy. Second, once he left the academy, Obasan forced him to work in the flower shop. At least he had some spare time that day, but that also happened on Saturdays. Lastly, Irika-sensei completed further math assignments. However, Naruto was aware that he would become a very talented ninja who would engage in spirit arts and combat. What was the actual amount of math he needed to know? Indeed, as his Nei-chan had pointed out, he would need to be proficient in budgeting and other related tasks if he truly wanted to be headmaster. However, that would only require him to know how to add and subtract large amounts of data, which he could do with a pen and paper. Naturally, Naruto was skipping class in order to go to his favorite ramen place, which he hasn't been able to visit very much over the past 6 months. Ino Yamanaka also detested Tuesdays. For nearly the same reasons, too. But for her, the worst part of her job was listening to her Nii-san complain about working in the flower shop. Additionally, she was aware of the precise location where her Nii-san had fled to, the ramen shop where he squandered the majority of the money he had made working at the flower shop. He spent a few hundred ryo there every week, but it wasn't that the ramen was bad or anything. There were times when he was truly absurd. But she couldn't really be that upset with him. She had enjoyed spending the past few months with her brother. Yes, they had a lot of arguments, but he was still a kind man. To her surprise, he was also a lot of fun to hang out with. Before their family ties were revealed, they had not gotten along this well. Her birthday was approaching, and she was generally happy with her life as it was. She was impatient. She returned her focus to her sensei, who was reviewing the fundamentals of algebra. Did they have to chart every potential positive response for 3x times 2y equals 40 plus y? What on earth was the purpose of that? This painting was so simple that Sakura Haruno was thrilled. She would have more time to gaze at her friend from Naruto. She was fairly certain that she liked him. She played with her hair's ribbon. She was starting to believe that Ino also liked him. She sincerely hoped not. She had been acting strangely lately, as evidenced by her referring to herself as Naruto's sister. She didn't find that fool appealing. He was also skipping. Once more. In contrast to Naruto Frenkuen, he was a complete moron and a useless man. Uchiha, a buddy of Naruto, started to sketch out the math problem while complaining. It was a pointless task that did not contribute to his strength. He was also complaining about the absence of a certain blonde fool. He had been watching him for the past 6 months when his life took a strange turn. The strongest girl in the class, Ino Yamanaka, abruptly declared that she was her sister and that he was her brother. The entire situation seemed strange, especially once they clarified the situation. After getting his ass kicked for defending someone stronger than him, Naruto becomes a family member and moves in with her family. For such a turnaround, he would have expected something more like love, but since Ino was one of his fans, he knew it wasn't that. Furthermore, it wasn't so because Naruto was unquestionably an orphan. He stopped thinking and carried on with the dumb graph. Though she was not shocked that Naruto was missing class, Hinata Hyuga couldn't help but wonder where he had disappeared to. But it was his unexpected relationship with Ino Yamanaka that piqued her interest the most. After hearing the narrative, she realized that Naruto had shielded her, not Ino. She believed she noticed a young blonde girl in the distance as she was being dragged away from this family member from the scene, but she wasn't positive at the time. That must be Ino, thought Hinata. However, she had no idea what the truth was. She didn't know why they suddenly thought of each other as brothers and sisters, and she wasn't sure if it was wise to admit that she knew their story was false. She chose to concentrate on the monotonous classwork at hand rather than continue to ponder about all of that. Nara, a shadow ninja, had completed the assignment after figuring out the solution twice when he was 7 years old and again earlier that year. Since writing down the answers was a quick chore, he lowered his head and looked at Naruto's vacant seat. His mother had brought him on an errand to drop off some of the special Nara fertilizer to the Yamanaka flower shop. Thus he had heard about the Naruto family relationship before the rest of the class. Things had been difficult to figure things out, and he still didn't know all the answers, so all his mother and he received as an explanation was, "It's complicated." The cover tale that the town would hear wasn't made. He had succeeded in determining that Inoichi Yamanaka was not Ino's biological father. Rather, he was the same man who had fathered Naruto. Ino had learned this and made the decision that family is family. The identity of their father was the only thing he was still unsure of. Naturally, he had never revealed to anyone that he had solved all of this. It was too difficult to do so. As he ate, Choji Akimichi tried to smuggle chips, hoping their sensei Irika wouldn't catch him. Irika Yumino did see Choji, but he was preoccupied with other things, specifically Naruto. He had already sent a copy of the math assignments home for him to do as homework because he had anticipated that he would fail to complete them that day. Between chasing him about and giving him zeros on everything, that had worked out well. He simply detested exerting himself on things he considered insignificant. He wasn't foolish. In recent months, Ino Yamanaka, an unexpected sister, had replaced his developing role as a close confidant, completely altering his relationship with them. He had gone to see the headmaster to find out what had transpired, but he would never tell them. The headmaster related the identical tale that he had heard directly from Naruto, explaining that he had permitted it in order to protect the psychological health of the students. He could not precisely criticize the headmaster for not telling him the complete truth, but his shinobi senses warned him that this was far from the whole tale. As a result, he became more of a mentor rather than such. Naruto had improved as a student even though he had skipped class that day. It's better, but not good. Additionally, he was pleased to assist Naruto in all of his future undertakings. Nico and Inoichi Yamanaka were having a good time together as they prepared for Ino's 10th birthday, which was coming up at the end of the month. Since the adoption of Naruto into their family for his sister's sake had exposed some of the people they knew as jerks, they were attempting to decide who they should invite. To Nico's chagrin, the Tuzos actually had more persons removed from the list this year than remained on it. Realizing how ignored Naruto was by mainstream culture did not sit well with either of them. Both had privately discussed how they believed it to be straightforward, silent discrimination, but it was actually far more pervasive and purposefully outcast-creating than they had anticipated. Over the past 6 months, they had taken steps to ensure his complete family integration. Since Naruto was accustomed to his own pace in life, it had been a challenging adjustment for them. They had to strike a balance between his obsession and their dislike of ramen in order to get him to eat a healthier diet. Getting him to complete classwork and homework was difficult, and the fact that they had already gotten his daily math assignments gave them a clear idea of where he would be going. They would first attack him at the ramen stand, but after speaking with Tucci, the chef, and Im, the waitress, they came to the realization that this establishment represented acceptance as well as ramen with Naruto. Therefore, they decided not to stop him unless doing so would make him less hungry for Nico's supper. Furthermore, they were unaware of the challenges of putting a child to bed at a late hour when they weren't naturally exhausted. Inoichi understood the value of being able to sleep on a schedule, even though he was only 9 years old, and not a baby that needed to be put to sleep. After giving it some thought, they both saw that he was, in fact, turning 10 a few weeks after Ino. They also needed to come up with a gift for him on his birthday. With great trepidation, Jiraiya started walking back into Konohagakure for the first time in years. Sarutobi-sensei had sent him a telegram months prior asking him to return to the hamlet for a private conversation as soon as possible. Before realizing the message's tone and content didn't suit that storyline, he thought it was some significant news about Orochimaru or something for weeks. He actually experienced a sense after reading it again that he hadn't had since he was a genin learning his trade at a young age. Though he sincerely hoped it wasn't the reality that he had a child, Sarutobi had no idea what was causing him to feel not mad, but just disappointed. He already had to deal with one child in Konoha. He didn't want to deal with another one of his own. The gate guard said to the well-known shinobi, "Jiraiya-sama, welcome back to the village. What brings you back after so long?" He grinned and nodded in return. "Thank you. Nothing serious, just that the women of Konoha are still the most beautiful in all the nations, and my books don't write themselves." he said with a grin. An orange book written by Jiraiya was retrieved by the gate guard from behind his booth. I love all your work, and I hope this one is just as good. I know I'm not an expert or anything, but this might be the best literature in the world. As he nodded, Jiraiya couldn't help but reflect on his first unsuccessful book. He hurried off, heading for the headmaster's tower as soon as he could by using the ninja highway. Good to hear. And make sure you buy it when it comes out. He determined that the window route was the best option for the day after a brief exercise in his spying abilities revealed that his sensei was by himself in his office. Without looking back to welcome his former student, the headmaster continued, Jiraiya, I was wondering when you would be showing up. With a shrug, Jiraiya went from the balcony into the actual chamber. Well, as spymaster, it took a while to clear my schedule. I also had to be confident that a certain snake was not about to make a major move. The headmaster agreed after giving him a quick glance. Quite true. I would rather he plan 1,000 plans than make one move on the shogi board. But that is not what I wanted to talk to you about. A tiny frown escaped Jiraiya's lips. When he saw the security seals rise, he looked about for Anbu and said, I was afraid of that. Did they not believe that he was a traitor? Ino Namikaze. He noticed that his pupil's last name was being used. Whom, sensei? Ino Namikaze, he said once again. He made a reference to Naruto by saying, Minato was an orphan, so he should only have him as family. And definitely no Namikaze. Alright then, does the name Nikko Tuzo catch your eye? Jiraiya froze for a second on this one, but he got over it. Nikko Tozu. Wasn't she dating Inoichi Yamanaka? I'm pretty sure they got married. Yes, they did. They also had a daughter. A daughter named Ino Yamanaka. Jiraiya's face dropped at this, but not for the reason the headmaster had assumed. So you knew about the affair? He had been aware of the wrongdoing his student had committed, and he had come to him for guidance on what to do. Hold up, Jiraiya said, starting to defend himself. Okay, first off, I would never support adultery, so you can't blame me there. Secondly, I thought it was just some one-time thing. When did Kid get involved? A few days later, he told his wife the truth, even though he would never acknowledge that he had urged him to keep quiet. And in his mind, that was the end of it. Sarutobi briefly softened and began to believe his pupil. I am not shocked he didn't tell you either. As you are probably aware, Nikko became pregnant soon after, announcing it after her marriage with Inoichi. However, she would later discover the father was not him, but Minato. They then conspired to keep it a secret until they thought their daughter, Ino, was old enough to understand. Jiraiya was taken aback. He never told him about Minato's second kid, who was reared by her mother. Damn Kami, he was his sensei. He asked his sensei, so Nikko and Inoichi told her the truth? He gave a headshake. No, they planned to keep it a secret. However, Minato knew he could have died before the day they told Ino, so he wrote a letter telling his side of the story. Nikko told me she couldn't throw it away, and one day Ino found out by accident. It escalated, and she ended up running out of her house and found Naruto, who had been injured in a fight protecting a girl from some bullies. Jiraiya knew where this was headed. The letter explained that Naruto was her brother, so she took him to the hospital where I checked up on him and found out the truth from her. Jiraiya said, What is the situation now? In order to find out what was happening with his godson. Naruto is living with them, as demanded by Ino. He was her brother, so they would begin acting like it. They are getting along quite well, like any other brother and sister. They told everyone that they bonded after Naruto attempted to protect her, and it is working for now. As a side benefit, I have heard he is doing better at school and the attitude towards him in the village has softened a bit. The headmaster went on to explain. He only wanted to ask him one more question. How are they taking the news that Minato was their father? Sarutobi took a moment to think before answering. Ino seems to accept it in that it's a fact about her, but she still considers Inoichi her true father. Naruto, on the other hand, is quite excited and wants to boast. I managed to keep him from doing so, but I had to use a little seal, one I learned from Danzo years ago. It makes sure the owner doesn't spill the beans about a specific thing unless the other person is aware of it already. Naruto accepted it with only a little hassle, and I plan on removing it once he becomes a genin. Jiraiya was aware that it was probably better to have a limiter in place to keep such a secret from being revealed for an orphan like Naruto. He would have boasted loudly too if he had known as a child that his father was a great shinobi. Jiraiya informed the sage headmaster. Well, his 10th birthday is next month, right, sensei? The 10th anniversary. If you don't mind, I will stay in the area until then. He nodded in agreement, vaguely understanding what was being implied. That would be fine, Jiraiya. Quite fine. Even though it wasn't quite noon and nothing had happened, Naruto was positive that today, his 10th birthday, would be the best one yet. He recalled how much fun it was to celebrate his sister's 10th birthday a few weeks prior. Ino's birthday had been celebrated with a sizable gathering of her families and friends. The Akimikis brought this incredibly tasty pork roast, and they had cake. With the assistance of Obasan Nico, he got Ino a charm bracelet, which she seemed to like and seemed to be quite delighted with. It was a truly wonderful experience. It was going to be his time to throw a fantastic birthday celebration. Even though there would only be Ino, her parents, and a few friends, he knew it would be much larger than anything he had ever experienced. He speculated that the reason Aji-san urged him to leave the house for the day was so they could organize a surprise party. But since this was the day that the majority of the villagers looked down on him the most, he was avoiding the general public. He didn't want to deal with that on what ought to be a really joyous day, but he didn't know why. Instead, he was exploring and ensuring that the day was enjoyable while seeing the Konoha native forests. He had stayed along the road, but he had no idea where he was. When he emerged from the trees and looked around properly, he assumed he would know. His curiosity was piqued when he noticed a fence in the distance, and the steam emanating over it. He approached and was taken aback by what he saw. In the center of the fence, a big man with white hair and a red vest was watching and laughing while a huge scroll rested beside him. Naruto questioned whether he was sick in the head, as Aji-san had said that some individuals were and acted irrationally because it made sense to them. Contrary to his better judgment, he approached the man to find out what was happening. It wasn't shocking that the man turned to face him because he wasn't being quiet. Naruto discovered a hole in the fence when he performed this. So, Naruto thought to himself, he was investigating it. He wanted to know what was generating that steam and what was beyond the barrier. Was there a river close by because he could also hear water? When the white-haired man spotted him, he smiled. That should have been a warning sign, but Naruto was Naruto. Yo, Gaki, wanna see something cool? Naruto said. Sure, where is it? He was beckoned to the fence by the man. It's simple, and I know you can appreciate it. Just look through this hole here. Naruto ignored all of the warning signs that were beginning to appear in his mind and strolled over there. He reasoned that curiosity, not shinobi, was what killed the cat. The man nodded when he indicated the hole he had been gazing at. To see what was behind it, Naruto slowly lowered his left eye to the hole. Water. Steam. Towels. Skin. Hair. Hair in an unexpected location. Ladies. Breasts. The mother of Shadow Ninja. The last thing made Naruto retreat. At last, he understood what this object was and what the man had been up to. He gestured accusingly in his direction. This is a women's bath. You're just some giant pervert, he replied. The man gave a shrug. After skipping a beat, the man put on a winning smile and said, No, kid. I'm not a pervert. I'm a mega pervert. Naruto gave him a weirdo-like look. Naruto was at the age where he was starting to value ladies, but his new life as his Obasan's brother and nephew made him respect and value women and their privacy even more. Why are you so proud about that? Being a pervert is bad. The man laughed. Kid, wait until you are older. You'll see that a lot of girls love it when you love the ladies like me. Naruto didn't accept it. We noticed a few kunoichi who he knew would not be pleased to be peered at during his brief glance into the bath. Bellowing, he cupped his hands around his mouth and inhaled deeply. Pervert! There's a big white-haired pervert looking in the woman's bath. Stop him! As soon as he heard Naruto's shouts and the rumblings of the women in the bath, his face fell. Gaki, don't you know it is rude to do something like that? He inquired. Before he started to run away from the danger area, the man just received a chuckle from Naruto. Naruto was no fool. He was aware that the pervert was going to get a severe beating. He spent a few minutes running through the forest on his way back, till the sounds of the irate women had long since subsided and he was by himself. He stopped, and he laughed. I bet that pervert got what was coming to him. The abrupt voice behind him startled Naruto, who turned to discover that the man had followed him all the way. Well, I know some little Gaki is about to get what is coming to him. The man balled his fist and gave Naruto's skull a solid thunk before he could say anything. It stung, so Naruto started to rub his head. Naruto bemoaned to the man. What was that for? You're just a peeker. The man gave a headshake. Then he effortlessly took an orange book out of his red vest and handed it to Naruto. I am no peeker. I am an artist. A writer. And what I was not doing was not peeking, but research for one of my books. Here, take a read. May I suggest page 103? He said. Naruto made the decision to turn to page 103 and read aloud what was there. Daisuke took Akane over to the bed, ripping off her bra, leaving her body exposed to the night. Pushing her against the mattress, he pushed his lips against her and began to slide his 2 fingers toward her. Wait a second. Naruto ended his story. Red in the face, he returned the book to the man and asked, Isn't this just some sort of dirty book? He waved it away. Keep it, I'm sure you'll love it in a few years. Just call it a birthday present. And so what if it is dirty? People like dirty. If people didn't do the dirty, then none of us would be around, now would we? Naruto was aware that the man was technically correct because he had heard the speech about the birds and bees in health class. Still, did he really need to put it in writing? When he grew up, would he actually enjoy it? Most significantly, Naruto pointed a finger threateningly at the man and said, Hey, how do you know it's my birthday? I've never seen you around. Yes, I have. I've noticed some white-haired guy with a big scroll in town for the last month, but I never saw his face. Have you been stalking me? The man raised his hands in the air. Whoa. I would do no such thing as stalking. I was simply learning background information about you. Naruto shot back. Isn't that stalking? He let out a gasp. Look, Naruto, let's get one thing straight. I didn't have to ever reveal my presence to you if I didn't want you to see it. I let you catch me gathering research, though I thought you would have been more understanding. And I was doing my research with permission from Sensei. Who's Sensei? Naruto asked, now increasingly interested in this strange man. He grinned. Oh, just the most powerful ninja in Konoha, old Sarutobi Sensei. Though I heard you call him Gigi. Naruto's eyes widened. Gigi taught you? I didn't know he had students. He gave a headshake. Gaki, do you just ignore everything your sensei tells you in school? Naruto gave a headshake. Well, I mean, if it's important then of course I'm gonna listen to him. The man let out a sigh. Have you never heard of the great Sannin? Survived the battle against Hanzo? Legends? Tsunade, Orochimaru, and yours truly, the great sage of Mount Mayaboku, Jiraiya? He fell to the ground in shock, then Naruto went on. So Jiraiya's your name, huh? And yeah, I remember something about Sannin and being survivors of some great battle in the Third or Second War, but nothing about them being taught by the headmaster Gigi. Then Jiraiya sighed deeply. You're killing me here, kid. I'm trying to show you how awesome I am, and you keep nitpicking. And to think, I wanted to talk to you about Minato. Naruto looked at his father's first name. Knowing he couldn't reveal anything, Naruto questioned. What do you mean, Minato? What Minato? Jiraiya snorted and then grinned contentedly. Finally, we are getting somewhere. But let's talk with that newfound sister of yours, Ino Yamanaka? Then I can tell you guys all about my student, Minato Namikaze. Then, instinctively, Naruto followed him back to the Yamanaka house. Did this Jiraiya teach his father? Was he aware that his son was Naruto? Was he aware of Ino? Naruto's mind was racing with a million questions, and before he knew it, Jiraiya was pounding on his front door. Wearing an apron, Nico looked astonished and was clearly a little dusty from the flour. She turned to face him and noticed Naruto beside him, saying, Jiraiya-sama! What a surprise for you to come here. Her expression became slightly more solemn. I'm guessing you would like a talk with Ino as well? Jiraiya gave a nod. And if you don't mind, could we use your attic for privacy? These are things we don't want random people finding out. For no apparent reason, Nico glanced around anxiously before nodding. She turned to face the interior of the home and said, Yeah, that is right. Sweetie, can you clean yourself up and head to the attic? You have a guest. As she came into view, Ino was also covered in flour dust. She glanced at Jiraiya in the doorway and asked, Why would I need to go to the attic for a guest? And who is he? Jiraiya went into the home, followed by Naruto. Ino's ears perked up and she turned to Naruto, who nodded. Well, you can call me many things, but the thing you probably would care about is how I was the sensei to a certain Yondaime headmaster that you have a particular interest in. I'll be ready in a moment. After a few minutes, the three of them were alone themselves in the attic, with Ino and Naruto standing next to each other and gazing up at Jiraiya. Downstairs, he had made a more official introduction to Ino, and now the serious talk began. To start the conversation, Jiraiya stated clearly, To answer the question on your mind, mostly no. Which one? Inquired Naruto. He had too many things that would be considered significant to be on his mind all the time. The question of, did I know Ino was Minato's biological daughter? I will admit I knew about the one-night stand Nico and him had, but I was certain you were Inoichi's. Minato hid that from about everyone. I think it was more to protect your mom than himself, you understand. That question had been the most significant to Ino, therefore she nodded. Regarding their biological father, Naruto inquired, What was he really like? He was pretty simple, actually. A great man, very caring, loved the village to death. In spite of everything, loved Kushina to death. He really cared about everyone in this village. To tell you the truth, he was never in love with the idea of being a shinobi. If he had the chance to protect this village by giving it all up, he would have. But I'm not sure how the village would have fared if it went up against Kushina either. He laughed. Inquiring as to why he was given a ramen topping for a name, Ino questioned, Why is Naruto named Naruto? The tale of the utterly gutsy shinobi. They all asked at once, But what now? It was a book I wrote long ago, an adventure book about a man named Naruto who refused to give in and would break the cycle of war in his world. Minato was about the only person who liked the book, and so he and Kushina decided to name their son after him. He stated solemnly, recalling the day it took place. When Ino questioned Jiraiya, Naruto's entire focus was on him. Wait, wouldn't that make you Naruto's godfather? Isn't that how that stuff works? Jiraiya sighed and gave a nod. Yeah, I realized the same thing when they told me. I am Naruto's godfather. I haven't been able to do much about it because of my job. Then Naruto asked his godfather, What's your job? I'm the best spy Konoha has, so I am better anywhere but here, and I'm also tracking my old teammate. He went rogue years ago. He was actually pretty mad he didn't get chosen to be Yondaime. He did some terrible things, and now I have to keep track of what he is doing because I know he wants revenge on Konoha and Sarutobi-sensei about it. Before Nico called them downstairs, the inquiries continued for a short while. Naruto and Jiraiya were left alone to converse for a while after Ino left first. So, as I bet you can guess, tomorrow morning I'm outta here. I wish I could stay around, but an old man like me probably would get in the way of this family you got for yourself, Naruto. He acknowledged the fact and nodded. It's okay, pervy godfather. Jiraiya grimaced at the nickname he had received being said yet again. You just gotta teach me something cool the next time you are around. He laughed aloud. Don't worry about that. I already know what spirit art I'm gonna teach you, then it was made up by your dad himself. And I'll teach Ino if she wants. But I bet you are stuck here doing nothing all the time when she is learning the Yamanaka spirit art, right? Naruto grinned. He was holding a scroll, which Jiraiya removed off his back. Well, as long as you focus most of your time on core energy control, can you tell me? What do you know about summonings? Naruto looked curious. Given the state of his class, Iruka Umino was only able to put his face in his hand. He couldn't wait for graduation to arrive, which was in 6 months. Shadow Ninja, Naruto, his friend, Sakura, Ino, and a toad called Gamatsu were all engaged this time. He was able to determine the toad's origin with just one estimate. Before he could actually call forth a toad, Naruto had to wait months. It turned out that he lacked the power and core energy control necessary to accomplish this. In order to summon more than tadpoles, he worked out whenever he could during his leisure time. To help him, Uncle Inoichi even taught him and Ino the tree-walking activity that is often reserved for genin. He eventually called forth a small orange and blue toad named Gamakichi after months and months of trying. He quickly became friends with the young man and was reportedly the big boss's son. Even though the only toads Naruto could now summon were his brother Gamatsu and their second cousin Kosuke, who was a member of the messenger toads, he still felt they were fantastic. They would listen to any crazy plan they could think of since they believed he was amazing, which resulted in circumstances similar to what they encountered today. From his students' rambling tales, Iruka had pieced together exactly what had transpired. It seems that back at their house, Ino and Naruto had argued about the color orange and stealth and attempted to enlist Shadow Ninja. Evidently, Naruto was dissatisfied with his response and chose to test it out on a toad. He was able to call forth the vivid yellow toad Gamatsu instead of his orange toad Gamakichi. In order to support his claim, he still went ahead and gave Gamatsu instructions to slip past Sakura and take Naruto's document. However, Sakura was upset by Gamatsu's lack of secrecy and accidentally threw it at his Naruto comrade. Ino became enraged at Naruto for allowing her Naruto companion Kun to be toad-faced, and he became enraged overall. After realizing that Naruto is at fault, his friend attacks him, but he defends himself by using Shadow Ninja. An angry Gamatsu, who had been flung on the ground, attempted to attack Naruto Buddy with his little toad limbs, but Shadow Ninja deemed the entire situation problematic and halted him in his tracks. In order to save himself and the toad assaulting Naruto's friend from getting smashed, Shadow Ninja was maintaining a shadow bond while Sakura and Ino attempted to kick Naruto's ass. Iruka had to decipher that scene when she walked in. Yes, he was eager for graduation to come. Iruka had to design suitable punishment for each person when he managed to get Gamatsu banished to his own land. He let off his companion Naruto with a warning that another outburst would result in actual punishment, and he gave Shadow Ninja a pass because he was an innocent bystander in the incident. Sakura received 100 lines of writing that read, I will not throw toads or beat up fellow classmates. Ino received a warning as well, and Nuda received detention for being the catalyst. While he had Nuda place chairs and correctly sweep the classroom floor, Irika graded papers during detention. Nuda complained to himself while Irika watched him. Come on, Nuda, don't act all haughty. You knew you would get in trouble for pulling a dumb stunt like that, Irika said to the blonde. He gave his sensei an eye roll. Yeah, but Nei-san didn't get in trouble and it is her fault this happened. And she actually hit me. Irika knew it, but she was excused from it due to a real academic regulation. You know about the sibling dispute rule, Nuda. You would have had twice as many detentions if it didn't exist. If siblings are in the same class, they need a little leeway or else things could get ugly. Which they nearly do with you and Ino. Then Nuda dismissed him, saying, Whatever. Irika let out a sigh. He wanted to remind Nuda that he wasn't attempting to be unjust to him, and avoid getting on Nuda's wrong side, which required pulling practical jokes. Fine, how about we make a deal? You do a good job and finish sweeping the floors before I am done grading. I will buy you 2 bowls of ramen. If not, you owe me a bowl. How does that sound? He bet his pupil. Nuda smiled at him like a fox. His lethargic sweeping became much more focused and quick as Irika was able to return to grading papers. Oh, you are so on, Irika-sensei, he said. It had been weeks since he could speak to Nuda. Since he understood that he was very similar to Nuda in the past, he enjoyed speaking with him as a buddy. Naturally, Nuda prevailed. Since Irika took his time to ensure that every paper was evaluated correctly, it would reflect ill on him if he defrauded a 12-year-old of some cash. In order to check on Orochimaru's influence in Kusagakure, Jiraiya sneezed on the way there. In the early evening, they sat side by side, Irika eating miso ramen and Nuda eating 2 meat ramens. So, it seems like you have mastered the summoning spirit art. I still can't believe how you got it. You saved Jiraiya from getting caught from peeping in the bathhouse and blackmailed him. Irika chuckled. I know the Yamanaka family are good with head games, and you seem to have picked it up with ease. Nuda gave the provided cover story a nod. My dad was the frickin' 4th headmaster, was all he wanted to say, but he was unable to do so. Not only for his Aunt Nico, but also because of the seal. Together with his father, she would be exposed as an adulterer, and he wasn't prepared to expose her. While they were still in the academy, he would not conceal his and Ino's ancestry indefinitely. Irika went on while he munched on a succulent piece of steak. Though I am pretty sure you should be trying to finish the Bunshin spirit art, am I right? Nuda swallowed his spoonful of ramen in a rough manner. Everyone else in the class could accomplish it, but he knew he still had a few months to finish. Still, he was unable to. I know, sensei. I just wish it wasn't so hard. Irika exhaled deeply. It is odd, because you are talented. I mean, since you have been putting effort into your classwork, you are doing well enough and you are a good fighter and can summon toads. Bunshin should be a breeze. Nuda nodded with agreement. I think it would be stupid to put in all that effort just to fail over this one spirit art. Irika went on. Is there any way I can get an exemption or something? I mean, I could just summon a toad and transform them into me. Could that count? Nuda turned to his sensei. Irika gave a headshake. I could, but that would be giving up. And the Nuda I know doesn't give up. That one struck near to home for Nuda. He would become headmaster. He couldn't give up on some ridiculous academy spirit art. He finished his second bowl really quickly, and then stood up. You're right, Irika-sensei. I don't give up. I'm gonna go home and get this Bunshin spirit art, or my name isn't Nuda, he exclaimed with pride. Irika gave his pupil a proud expression. He gave him a positive thumbs up and said, Good to hear, Nuda. Now, no more stupid pranks with your toads and work hard. Nuda smiled. Naruto said. Of course. See you in class, sensei, and left for home. Even if it meant doing the one thing he detested the most, he was determined to defeat the Bunshin. Naruto berated his more intelligent sister Ino, saying, Ino Yamanaka is the best ninja in the world and better than her baka brother at almost everything. She is so kind and so helpful. She is the best. This did not embarrass him. She was second in the class to her Naruto buddy Uchiha, and she had known the Bunshin for more than a year. Though Ino was the most intelligent of the two, he was aware that he was the superior combatant. From behind her desk, Ino smiled. She was also very conceited and had instructed her brother to say that whenever he needed help with something to demonstrate that he truly needed it. That is what I like to hear. So, Anai-chan, what do you need help with? She asked. Bunshin. Bunshin? Yeah, the stupid Bunshin spirit art. I can't figure it out, and I need it to pass. And Sensei said I was talented, so it shouldn't be this hard. You know how to do it, so I need you to help teach me. Ino sighed. Well, of course I'm gonna help my little brother pass. And I think I know why you are having trouble. Dad said you have a lot of core energy but no control of it. Maybe if you get better control of it, you can do it easier. Recalling the conversation, Naruto nodded. Inoichi claimed that despite being only 12 and lacking much self-control, he possessed as much core vitality as adults. He was aware of what he needed to do. He simply had no idea how. Uncertain of them, Naruto inquired. So, what sort of core energy control things are there? Well, Dad did say something about advanced tree walking or something about needing a lake to walk on. But I don't know how to do any of that. But the leaf concentration exercise should work, Ino shouted. Leaf concentration? Naruto was clueless about. Ino gave an eye roll. We covered it on a day you and Lazy and your friends skipped. It means using your core energy to make sure a leaf sticks on your forehead, even if you are doing push-ups or running. You have to concentrate your core energy and control it, so it is perfect. Want to give it a try? Naruto considered it for a moment. His sister heard him say, Sure, that can work. In light of that, they left their home and proceeded to a nearby tree. They returned to Ino's room after snatching half a dozen leaves from its branches. Ino sat in her chair and clutched one leaf in her hand. Before tilting her head back and placing the leaf on her forehead, she gave the instruction. This is what you should try to do. She focused for a few seconds, then slowly raised her head to her typical position while keeping the leaf in place. The leaf was still attached, but she kept going until she was sitting in her chair in a half bow. Naruto's eyes glowed. That was more awesome than I had anticipated. My turn! He exclaimed with excitement. Tilting his head back, he tucked the additional leaves into his pocket and slapped one against his forehead. After a few seconds of focus, the leaf leaped from his forehead and adhered to Ino's ceiling. After glancing up at the leaves, they turned to face one another. Nei-san, I think I messed up. She glanced back at the leaf on the ceiling and smiled abruptly. Yeah, you baka! I don't even know how you did that. Except you put in way too much core energy. Though that seems like it could be a pretty cool spirit art. Naruto looked at his sister and arched an eyebrow at the leaf. What do you mean? Well, Ino started explaining. It seems like if you are holding something and overload it with core energy, you can push it onto something and it will stick. I don't know how you would use it, but it could be dangerous. Naruto's eyes glowed. He immediately came up with a method. Like maybe if you can't move your arms, you can use it to throw a shuriken or kunai, for example. Ino concurred. That could work. Or maybe, if there is a handheld spirit art, you can use it to push it out of your hands and at your enemy. Make a short-range spirit art long-range. His sister was alarmed by Naruto's unexpected enormous smile. Menai-chan, you look a little scary that happy. What are you thinking? He looked at his sister. He looked at her slyly and asked, Didn't Dad have a famous handheld spirit art? Ino's gaze lifted. Yes, he certainly did. They were also certain that Naruto's perverted godfather had promised to instruct them. Her young brother was like a battery, but she wasn't sure she would have the core energy to do it for a while. She shook her head, though. As she concluded, the leaf finally released the core energy it had accumulated and fell off the wall. That isn't what we are supposed to be doing. We are working on your core energy control to learn Bunshin so you can pass. We can talk about this once you can actually become a shinobi, alright? She said. On Naruto's shoulder, it fell.